Okay, so basically, guys, I attended a briefing about a week and a half ago. The title of it was Emergent Threats, Critical Infrastructure, Real and Present Threats to America's Power Grid. All right, so this is a security network. Basically, it's a group of security professionals, includes government security at all levels. And this was a roundtable discussion, right? So I just sit and listen. So it includes security professionals from the government, various levels of government, and some of the leading power suppliers in the country. Okay, so that's the background on this. For me, what am I doing there? Well, my security background includes critical infrastructure. So on security, they kind of divide the risks into different silos, right? And yeah, they do talk across the silos, but it might be terrorism as one silo, but critical infrastructure. So I was a chemical manufacturing, which chemical manufacturer gets bunched in with power grid, water supply, and all that, so railroads. So that's critical infrastructure. So that's the background. This is about an hour and a half briefing, and I thought it was very relevant to what we talk about all the time as preparedness-minded people. And in fact, their advertisement for the talk, it basically, I'm going to paraphrase, it basically said there's real risks, and the general population has no idea about the risks. And the same stuff that we see all the time about people who have their heads in the sand about what's going on. And it sounded like a prepper wrote the dang advertisement for this class. So I said, you know what, I'm taking some time off of work, and I'm going to go and participate or attend this. So I took some notes, and that's what this briefing is about. Just my notes. And yes, I'm going to save the really best stuff for last. So you have to, like they say in the YouTube videos, stay to the end to find this out. All right. So they started out talking about some of the current state, right? The current condition. People looking to hit the power grid. This is a real risk. There's people out there right now. The grid, as you guys know, we all talk about this. The grid is the Achilles heel. Without power, you don't do anything in this country. All right, so it is the Achilles heel. There has been a 70% increase in attacks. We're not talking 1960. That's from 2021. Yep. Department of Energy says in last year alone, 163 separate incidents, mostly physical. That's 2022. So there are a lot of attacks. Some of these make the news. Most of these don't make the news. All right, but that's a lot of attacks on the power grid. All right. So again, on the current state, the different tactics and techniques, they were varied. So it actually took the security professionals a little bit of time to actually figure out that there is a connection. It's a loose connection. Usually, if you see very similar tactics and strategies, what you can see a connection with people, but there was no. The tactics were very different from attack to attack to attack. So they thought it was hard for them to find the connection, but there is a connection between people. Not so organized; it's more of a disorganized connection, but it is there. Tactics, they have been very focused. The attacks have been focused. Here's the thing, guys. These people that are attacking the grid, very often, they know exactly what to hit. All right? There are actually what they call the dark web. There you get all kinds of information. And what they find is that there are blueprints, and these people, and they're very open about what they're going to be doing, right? What they want to do. And they'll get on the web and they'll research, and they'll find out that, okay, you've got this substation, and if you shoot this one component, it's going to take down everything. And they know all this stuff. So their attacks have been very, very focused. And one of the things that they find is that some of these attacks have used 50 caliber rounds. What does that tell you if somebody's using a 50 caliber round to attack something?
Nothing. He got money.
He's got money.
Thank you. That's what it tells the government too. You got money, you got resources, and also you're pretty dang committed to this.
Right.
Because a 50 caliber weapon is not cheap.
Yeah.
The ammo is not cheap. Yeah. So if you're using a 50 caliber, I mean, yes, you get more power, you get more distance, and all that other stuff. But you're committing resources to these type of sabotages. All right, that's important for us to understand. The risk is real, and this is not. And this is one thing that they mentioned. Typically, this is not some redneck prepping Yahoo who's driving by with his hunting rifle. Hey, let's shoot up a transformer. That's not. You might think this, right? That's not who it is. Right? That is not who's doing this. Redneck Yahoos don't walk around shooting 50 round. I mean, some might, but generally speaking, they don't have their 50 cals and shoot. All right. So live on the analysis. The focus so far has been on physical security, and one thing as preppers, I've heard this so many times. The grid is so fragile. There's 4 or 5 stations that really connect the grid to other parts of the grid, and you knock out these 4 or 5, you shut down the whole grid. You guys may have heard something along those lines. So the focus has been on physical security due to for physical attacks on parts of the grid. We'll talk about what they're not covering in just a moment. There has been a lot done since 2013, and most attacks have been at the distribution level. What does that mean? Think about your town, the little substation in your town, right? That's where the attacks have been. And I got to tell you, these guys, they said this 15 different ways to Sunday. They're not concerned about those. All right, 2 reasons. All right, any thoughts on why they would not be too concerned about the little substation in our town, as far as taking measures to protect them? Any thoughts, guys? Why would you not?
They're not critical, but they are.
They can feed past.
Well,
That's just
They
a
can be
regional
bypassed
problem, not a-
electronically.
yeah, you got it right there.
Only if
All right.
that's one town?
Okay, so if you knock out a small little substation, okay, you knock out power for 30, 40,000 people, not a big deal. That's a small storm. Okay?
Yeah, that's like knocking out Milan and leaving
Yeah.
the surrounding areas to.
So when they're talking about committing resources, they're not going to focus on that little substation, even though that's where a lot of the attacks are happening, right? Because the impact is going to be relatively small in the big scheme of things. The other is there's like 50,000, there's thousands of these all across the country, and that would be very expensive if they were going to have that type of control. So they're not. The attacks have been there. Many single points. At this point here, this really intrigued me because I know what on the prepper blogs and all that what they talk about. But many single points of failure have already been removed. Okay, that's good news.
Yeah.
That is good news. All right, so we talked about the weakness of the grid.
I have a question.
Yes.
Am I right in what I think I understand, that Texas has its own power grid separate?
Yes, there's actually several different grids, but Texas, and it covers most of Texas, it's almost all, but yes, Texas has its own grid. And a couple of years ago, it was the Texas grid that went down, and it was down for like a week or so during a big freeze.
Wintertime, yeah.
What's that?
Wintertime.
Yeah. All right, so let's see. So many single points of failure have been removed. Substations still not properly safeguarded. Like I said, too expensive, too many of them. All right, too
That's
many.
probably why they're the ones being hit, because they're not protected.
It could be.
It could also be practice for hitting the big one.
Well, and Dan, we're going to get into that. Yeah, so you're not far off there.
Omaha and Cheyenne, would they still be able to function, those DOD, Omaha and Cheyenne, they have a
Cheyenne
lot of
Mountain.
military stuff going on there.
Cheyenne's got its own
Would they still be able
power.
to function if the grid went down?
Military sites are a bit more hardened than the general civilian
They've also
operation.
got backup power
Yeah.
supplies.
Yeah. All right, so let's see, constant state of adjusting. That's on both sides. That is on the security side, and constantly making adjustments, but those people attacking the system, constantly updating their tactics. They're very skilled at what they do. And like I said, they are making adjustments regularly. Small remote substations, most at risk, and also least likely to get any type of protection. So that's kind of a picture of where they're at right now. Transmission level, this is where the security focus is at. All right, the larger stations that distribute to all those substations, that's where if you hit a transmission station, you could take out a state or two. Okay, that's where the security focus is on hardening the equipment. And it'd be nice if they could just bury put everything underground, but you can't because there's a lot of heat generated, and you've got to have that open air, basically, to allow that heat dissipation. All right, so transmission is where the industry is going to focus, where the government's going to focus. Intelligence, this is the key. So they're using AI cameras, using robotic drones. This is the power companies. Social media monitoring. Okay, so this is some of the methods that they've got going on right now. They'll set drones up, robotic drones, that will just monitor and make adjustments. Really, it's really amazing how they're run by AI and make their own adjustments. Yeah, you know, the biggest thing, like I said, is those remote stations. Not much they can do for that. So one of the biggest gaps, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the gaps that they have. And one of the biggest gaps that they have is training, all right? So far, the general picture on the training is they do a lot of what they call, their work is in silos, all right? For example, if you're going to do a terrorist attack, they focus only on the terrorist attack. If you're going to do a hazmat release, they focus on the hazmat release. Not a lot of broad-based exercises. Tabletops, that's the big way to train. You guys may have been through a tabletop or two. If you guys don't remember, we do that here. Yeah, they're trying, the system, when I say the system, the power companies, the government, really trying to transition to more broad-based tabletops and drills, so that they can really see the interconnectivity, because that's really the system failure with the government, with the utilities. The system failure is when it crosses outside, crosses those silos. So the hazmat people maybe not communicating with the cyber people, maybe not communicating with the terrorists. So kind of a big gap right now. And the problem is the enemy understands that that is a gap. So some of the things that they have identified, the industry has identified that they're working on. Risk assessments, need to crawl then run. You've got to have a good risk assessment process, and that's really lacking. There's a lot of areas, and these guys are talking about what they are doing, but the reality is there's a lot of areas that are not up to speed with where some of these larger companies are. So when they say, hey, we're using robotics, not everybody's using robotics, right? Just some of the larger companies are. So risk assessment's got to be done. Changes. Right now, a lot of the changes are driven top down. The politicians or the company execs say, hey, we need to make this change, and that's a real weakness. You know, they need to listen to the boots on the ground. And that, again, they've identified this as a weakness, and there's transitions within the power industry to accommodate this, to make those changes. Feds very focused on getting more involved, especially exercises and drills. That is where the bread is buttered, is making sure that you've got good drills, good tabletops, over and over and over and over. And go ahead.
I was going to say that, to me, that just screams feds pissing away money on a study, another study. I mean, they
You know what it screams to me?
the feds need to. Okay, yeah.
You know what it screams to me?
What?
That this group is ahead of the big boys. We have done our own risk assessments. We do tabletops that are broad-based, and we'll probably do more if you guys want those.
Yeah, we do.
But,
What does tabletops mean?
Discussion like we're having over.
It's looking at the big picture.
Right.
We're not
I know
going
that
to focus on
sounds
one.
stupid.
okay, so, yeah, all right, so there's different ways that you can have drills, right? You can run through a real-life scenario. Okay, let's have a fake fire and all this. A tabletop, because you can't really simulate an EMP, okay? So what you do is you sit around and someone guides a discussion.
Brainstorming.
Yeah.
No, brainstorming is different. Brainstorming is you're trying to solve a problem. It's more like role-playing, like a Dungeons and Dragons type
Oh.
game, okay? Look at that, because she has not been through one of ours.
Yeah.
If she's been through one of ours, she'd be like, oh yeah.
Yeah, they're good.
Yeah, all right. So, but you're actually walking through, but you're doing it at the tabletop. You're not out in the field getting all nasty and dirty. And you go through the scenarios. And with ours, we have the randomizer. because real life is random. So you and I could have the same response to the same situation, have different outcomes, right? So the randomizer really, I think, makes it interesting, keeps it interesting. But that's what they're talking about, is they need more of these. They need more broad-based that doesn't just focus. Let me give you an
On a
example.
particular
On a
problem.
So when I was in industry, one of the things I had to do is a big security one every year. So I had to narrowly focus this on the security system, right? So that meant by the nature of this, I'm leaving out other aspects, right? Now, I would tend to broaden it just because it got people more into it, but that wasn't what the government was looking for. Okay, they wanted that silo. And now what they're saying is, the silo doesn't work. We need to be testing. For example, if I was to do a security, what about injured people, right? How am I going to deal with public relations? What are we going to, as one thing, maybe an environmental impact, all right? Now, the terrorists blew up this chemical plant, now it's into the waterway, and see how it adds one into the other. And that's what they're lacking. And that's what, so that's what this screams to me, is that we actually have been doing these things that the feds and the power industry.
Well, and I can see industry doing it for their own good, for A, for their safety, and B, for profit.
Right.
The government, in my humble opinion, should stay the hell out of everybody's business and do what they do, but it should be minimalized. Government's involved in way too much
But
shit.
when it comes to emergencies, we all tend to rely on the government to handle emergencies. Because a company's going to focus.
I guess most people. I never have.
But a company's going to focus on the company the company's concern ends at the company's property line. Right?
And at their
Typically.
profit line too.
Yes.
You're right.
Yeah. Whereas the government would be focused on how that's going to impact the town that's 5 miles away, right? So they're going to be focused on all that and how we're going to deal with that senior citizens home that's nearby that location.
Right.
So you lost the power, and the powers companies, okay, I'm focused on the power facility, and the government would be saying, okay, now we've got this hospital, and they need power, and what are they going to do? And we've got traffic lights, and we've got a water treatment system that now we can't run, and that's that broad-based, everything that gets impacted, but the current drills don't deal with all of that, whereas that's what they're saying, and they've identified that as a gap, and they've been making changes towards that. All right, so Fed's very focused on getting them more involved, and I got to tell you, I've been involved with the Feds on drills, and I think it's a net positive. All right, guys, YouTube, make sure you give me extra algorithm context with that one. All right, sorry. All right, but no, really, seriously, I've been with a number of drills, and I think they bring a net positive to that. All right, so they kept saying they hit so much on the need to do the drills and the risk assessments that it really just put a smile on my face, because this is what we do, right? I mean, we test ourselves. All right, have the drills before it is the real thing. That's like a no-brainer, right? But they have to keep telling themselves, because they're missing this. They know they're missing it. Step through each moment of the event, walk through the scenario. All right. Transformers. Here's a key problem. Some of the transformers that are still at risk, and again, we all know this. Some of the key transformers, some take months to replace. Some will take a couple of years to replace. We know this. Who else knows this? The bad people.
Our enemies, yeah.
Right? The bad people that want to take the grid away from us, they know this. So risk reduction is the name of the game, which means that's why they're going to focus on the big distribution centers, and they're not going to focus on the little substation, because if that little substation goes down, only 40,000 people, just like a small storm, okay? And they can send people to go fix that. But you get a big distribution center that connects 3 grids and covers 15 western states. That's major. That's where their focus has been. So risk reduction, name of the game. Concerned about drones made in China. We had a good discussion about drones. And on the security side, most drones, they're made in China. They got Chinese software, and that is, there's not a whole lot of info on what China is getting, what China's not getting, but there is a bit of a concern that every time they fly a drone over a piece of critical infrastructure, that China might be getting that knowledge as well.
Like they got spy bots inside the box or
Yeah,
something.
Yeah,
Like,
spy software, yeah. So that is a real risk and that's from the cybersecurity guys. They think that is happening.
that never even occurred to me that China would be infiltrating surveillance using toys, but.
We're buying it from them.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they're not toys now; they're hobby items. But
Yeah, right. So, key thing, situation's changing rapidly, which means on the security side, it's always a challenge for the security guys to stay up. Because, people who've got bad intentions, they only have to be successful once, right?
That's it.
But the security guys have to be successful every single time.
That's right.
All right, so let's see. Silos of security, this is some of the comments that they had. Silos of security don't work. They need to blend sectors. They need that communication between different segments. It's a gap right now. It is a gap, and that would be a failure point. There is a plan in place to respond to large-scale attack, multi-jurisdictional. So they do have plans so that if a major grid goes down, nobody got into what any details. It wasn't really the focus of this discussion. But there are government plans to respond to a big total grid failure. All right. Some jurisdictions, on the flip side of this, some jurisdictions haven't even mapped out where the substations are. All right, I want you guys to think about that. So this has been at least a decade. This has been a major risk, right? And you still have some jurisdictions, particularly rural jurisdictions, don't even the government agencies that are tasked with responding to the big emergencies don't even know where the substations. They don't have them on maps. Okay, a lot of the larger jurisdictions, basically everything's in the computer, and if an incident pops up on the police scanner system, their computer in their vehicle would pop up. Oh, that's a substation. That's where, and all that info would pop up. But a lot of jurisdictions, I bet you, my county's probably in that group. It's pretty small. Don't even have those mapped out. All right, social media monitoring. It's an ongoing game. Looking for keywords, looking for discussions. Like I said, these groups, they're very open. They're not really hiding a lot. And the problem is that the police are not spending a lot of time looking. And, on one hand, we say, yeah, I don't want the government watching everything that's online. But on the other hand, I have this couple of slides. I've got a comment here on the next slide that they made. We'll come up to this in just a moment. All right, so groups, right now, as of last week, many of these groups that are pushing these type of disruptive behaviors, they've gone underground. Because you guys remember, there's a number, like 3 of these attacks that made the national news, and basically shooting events. And so the feds really ramped up the hunt for these guys, so they've gone underground. They did not disappear. We have not had any significant power system attacks in the last couple of months. It's not because they're gone. All right, they've just gone underground. They're just waiting. Time sensitive. Information that they get is time sensitive. These people always changing. They're just biding their time right now, just waiting. All right, now these next couple of points. This is really what I wanted to take away here. One thing that they did, they've had a number of big tabletop community-wide scenarios. All right, what would happen within the community with a major grid system failure? And what they found out is that when you're talking with your neighbors, you're working with your neighbors, and the grid's down, and it's down for week 1, everyone is working together. Down for week 2, everyone's still fun and all this, and by week 4, everything has fallen apart. All right, neighborhood cohesion will collapse by week 4. Now, that is their tabletops. And I got to tell you what, like I said, I've been through a number of these. I know how people act in these tabletops, and they're going to measure what they say and what they do, and even in that situation, they still come up with total civil collapse in 4 weeks. I would cut that in half.
I would too. think
I would
it's-
just cut that in half. If we have a total grid failure, you've got a couple of weeks maximum, I think, that's just me talking, to build those bonds with the neighbor, build up your new security. If you haven't already done it, you guys are already doing it, that's what you need to do. Steps ahead. I mean, I'm working, trying to build a relationship with my neighbor. Don't wait. I don't think you're gonna have the 4 weeks. Now, we're in a rural environment, we might have a little bit more than the suburbs. The urban guys,
They're toasting a
They're in
week.
trouble.
a
They're in
week,
trouble.
oh my gosh, somebody drops a hat the wrong way and they riot.
Yeah.
And, my sports team lost the world championship, let's riot. Oh, my sports team won the world championship,
Let's
let's
riot.
riot.
Right.
Somebody got arrested, oh, let's riot.
Yeah.
Oh, somebody did not get arrested, they should have, let's riot. That's urban areas. But the suburbs that are pretty stable and have been stable for a long time, I think that's what falls apart within a couple of weeks.
I think they're only stable because the grocery stores are open.
I do not
The
disagree.
minute the grocery stores are not open, they won't be
Okay,
stable.
but.
Nobody in neighborhoods even grow
All
food
right,
anymore.
you know what, let's hit that for just a moment, all right, because I agree with you 100%. They're only stable because the grocery store, let's just take that as a fact, right? Now, when the grocery stores are empty, we all know they all have about 3 days worth of food, but people have food in the pantries, right?
About a week's or 10 days
A week,
worth.
10 days, right? Closer, maybe 2 weeks, and what did we just say? It'll all fall apart in 2 weeks, right? And that gets right in line what we were saying.
But it's also long enough for people to realize that this is not going away.
Right.
Whereas a storm or lose power for a few days,
Yeah.
people understand, okay, it's gonna be restored. And even with the last tornado, some people were out for like a month, but we knew that it was coming back. When you get a total or partial grid failure 2 weeks in, there's no sign of it
And
coming
it's
back. You don't have
widespread.
food.
Right.
There's a really good book, if anybody wants to read it, or anybody likes reading books, it's 1 Second After.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I've
Yeah.
read the series.
It's about the grid down, it's about the grid down situation and
Yep,
what comes up,
yeah.
And that's just a fictional book, but I think it's.
We were
pretty
actually-
good.
It
We were in
puts
that
things
neighborhood
into
last weekend.
perspective. It helps you.
Yeah, I like the novel. I'm a fan of the novels because you
Me
get
too.
to see someone else's
Perspective.
view on the
Yeah,
problems and
imagination.
and how they solve them. You get to expand your view. All right, I'm saving one more bullet point for last. All right,
Lay it out there.
I'm gonna put it out here. All right, here's the thing. This is what these guys agreed. Okay, dire position. The term they use now for you guys, we've talked about this before. In security, we really don't talk about predictions as much as assessments, right? It's about probabilities and chances, and you could everything could be lined up, and you stop a bad event. So just it doesn't mean if there's an assessment, it doesn't mean it's going to happen, right? So it's all based on probability. So one thing that they all agreed on, that the indicators say that a dire situation, we're talking a major grid down event, has got a high probability within the next 12 to 18 months. All right? They said it, yes, high probability. And that's what I wanted to share with you guys. So they do believe it will be tied in with the election,
Yeah.
okay?
Big shock.
Prior to the election.
Really?
Yes. And
What a shock.
yeah, real shock. And these are actually some of the questions that came up that I capture or comments. What is the top cybersecurity threat? Top one, hostile nation state actor. And any guesses on who that would be? And you do not get to say Russia.
China.
Yeah, that's the only other one, right?
Yeah.
China, top security threat. Yeah, so they do think that it's a very high probability, which is really pretty significant. That got my attention. And
I would say Nazis, because there's a lot of them, and they're in every country. They're here too. You're just waiting for the nod.
yeah, well,
They're just waiting.
Yeah,
Come on, they're bringing them in by millions every week. We're getting more and more coming into our country.
Yeah.
Mexicans, Chinese,
Yeah, but
all other countries.
Okay, but that is not who these guys that watch this think are the risk for the power grid. Remember, this is focused on the power grid system for a major event. So the big one, and what else I have up here? Supply chain compromises would be a threat from the cybersecurity. Nation, state, preposition in operational theater. Nations, so an insider threat. All right, so yeah, that's another nation putting resources within this country, prepositioning so that they could carry out attacks.
Like all the
Look,
Chinese
like the-
nationals coming up through the border.
Right.
Well, I was just gonna
exactly.
say, like,
Thank you very much.
okay, yeah, okay, so that's already happening.
So that's a big one to me, guys. I don't know that I can overstate that. They were pretty emphatic that they think it's a high probability within the next 12. That's next year, guys. Next
Yeah,
year.
Sure,
All right.
that's why they're trying to get them all in
Well, and
this year.
They don't.
Well, it's between now and the election,
But they don't
2024.
Yeah.
They don't typically make
Prediction.
statements that bold.
That's
right?
right.
No, no.
Typically, they
In
will
fact,
say increased risk,
I have
decreased risk.
I have never heard. I've been doing this. I've been in security for decades. I have never heard something this big labeled as high probability.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
All right.
increased
High
risk,
probability
something like
is raising the red flag. We need to do more. We need to do something. So, yeah, like I said, that got my attention. That's why I said, hey, I need to share this.
Well, I'm a conspiracy theorist, and I'll own that. But I think a lot of them know that it's going to happen because they're part of it.
Yeah,
Just saying.
yeah.
That's what I believe.
So the other comments, that,
Infiltration from within.
the other comments need more tabletop exercises. All right, they just we got to practice the systems. That's when you want to find failures before you actually need the system. And another comment: when the power goes out, everything stops. And increased surveillance of the internet. And again, this is from their perspective, pretty bad when everyone except law enforcement officers know that something bad is going to happen. All right, everyone's aware there's going to be an attack except the people who can stop it. All right, so that's why they want to keep pushing more surveillance of these type of groups. And I know that by itself does not really sit well with many of us because I don't want the government surveilling us. So I'm not going to have any judgment on that. I'm just telling you that's their perspective.
Yes.
Any questions, comments? Comments, questions, thoughts? Yes, ma'am.
So, your last talk, you talked about putting yourself in the scenario and working your way through it in your mind, right?
Yeah.
So if I was these bad guys
Yeah.
that are blown up transformers, I would say, hey, let's all get together and do it on the same day and make a plan so that, May 15th at 2 o'clock, all across the country, they're going to blow transformers at all different places all at the same time. So maybe they're laying low because that's what they're doing.
Yeah, that is not outside the world of possibilities.
That's
The idea that a nation state being behind this, maybe China, maybe Iran,
Maybe Korea, maybe.
maybe I don't know, the Papal
Black
State,
Lives
I don't
Matter.
know.
Yeah.
Antifa.
Antifa.
Antifa's not a nation state.
They're the biggest threat that we
The
have.
Catholic
Okay,
Church.
okay, but I'm trying to get to a point here. But if it's a nation state that's behind it, that makes it so much easier to organize because you don't even really need communication. You send your assets in to the U.S. With this information ahead of time with code words.
Pre-range
And it
signal.
can all be organized in the safety of your own country. And then you just give, everyone's got a target, everyone's got an activation word. And so, that makes it easier to carry out something like this. People like Antifa, they are bad in their own way, but I don't know, they can't figure out how to live out of their mama's basement, get out of mama's basement.
I
So,
think they're just hired thugs.
That's all they are.
yeah, I think they are there, yes, from the globalist elites.
In your driving and or routing, do you personally make it a habit of changing routes when you go places?
I do.
Try to mix it up.
I have a couple of different routes that I use to go to when I go to my bug out location.
And no, well,
And I regularly mix up routes in and around town.
yeah.
Now, I have a certain river that I have to cross, and there's one bridge, so that's kind of a choke point. But I have mapped out other very circuitous routes to avoid that if I had to.
Yeah.
But yes,
That's one wonderful thing about this Delorme book is you can find a dirt road that maybe can get you somewhere else.
And that's actually something I've been practicing for many, many moons. When I was, yeah, nice, yeah, I've got that book. So when I was a young Marine, I took a course, combat, terrorism counteraction for Marines. And that's one of the things that they hit is just keep mixing up the routes. So since then, since I was like 20 or so, I've been practicing that.
I think we got all our kids doing that nowadays.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, it's a good idea. You get to know your area a little better. All right, I guess that's it. All right, thanks, guys.